In the era of AI, value propositions get augmented. So if your product does not represent or provide real value, that's going to be augmented and amplified. And because of that, it would just quickly die. So you got to be able to provide true value, almost magic and surprising. People want to see AIs do things that are not their standard.
There's always this tension between what someone wants and what they actually need. And there's this famous, I'm not sure quote, but example of like, before cars, people just asked for faster horses. And I have a maybe bad take, but I think honestly, the best thing to do is often to just give people faster horses. I love faster horses. It's fine. Most of the time, we can iterate ourselves towards something that's actually better. And we don't see this big paradigm shifts so often. So in most instances, I think it's actually about iterating constantly while questioning, is this the right direction? Sometimes you might pivot, but most often it's fine to give people faster horses, honestly. Mostly that's the right choice. But then when people are asking about things, we need to, I think, try to give them that while of course, questioning what's the actual need. Maybe it's not a faster horse, but maybe most often that's fine. A faster horse wins.
So stopping features from overtaking user value is a real critical thing to do in product making. It's a difficult balance to achieve because on one hand you might have business pressures to get certain technologies in or for certain changes to be made to the product. But you can't forget the durable user needs that are the reason for the product's existence. If you can find that magic, which is marrying those business needs with the user needs, then you've got a perfect solution to work on from there. But always go back to the users. They know what's best. They know what they need. And you might be able to sprinkle a little bit more on top of that, but that's where you should be getting your value from. In an enterprise, you're always getting requests at the time for new features or for demands on your team's time, which frankly happens more often than feature requests necessarily. It can be very hard to say no, particularly to senior leadership who control the fate of the product and the organization and you and your team in their hands. I prefer a not yet approach to just a flat out no. Or one of the things that I adopted with my team is what I call a mild, medium and spicy approach. So if I have a request from my leadership for something that I don't think my team has time to do or necessarily is the right time to do it, I consider that the spicy need. And then I talk to my leadership and my teams about what we can do as stepping stones to work up to that point. And that way I'm not putting large, massive asks on my teams to execute on quickly. If we can find a way to reframe it as steps on a roadmap to get to that point, it helps the leadership to feel the product is still moving forward effectively, but doesn't overwhelm my design and research team.
The immeasurable in design, I think, really ties back to how then we try to build GitHub. Because if we would try to measure and A/B test every single thing, of course there are signals that you can find when you test and drive decisions with data. But I think you lose out on so much. And it's difficult to know what you lose out on. For example, I think if you have a product where you consume media, like a video or audio or something, and you drive decisions with data, you're almost bound to introduce a feature when you have played something, you're going to autoplay the next thing that's coming up. Since that's going to drive a metric that's important for you, which is how a lot of people, how much they use the product. But clearly it neglects the experience, the qualitative experience of having that maybe stressful thing happen over and over again. Maybe you overuse the product and it doesn't feel nice. And so I think driving decisions with data always comes at a cost. And at GitHub specifically, I think we maybe at times over-index on doing then the opposite. We catch clear errors and regressions with data, but a lot of the decisions are driven more through qualitative discussions, talks with customers, and amongst ourselves as those making the product.
One of the most pervasive myths about the field of UX, which still exists to this day, but we have been fighting against for literal decades, is the idea that UX is just there to make things pretty or to make the users feel good. That is not what UX is or should be. UX is the intermediary between the business and the customer. And it's UX's job to find creative problem-solving solutions by deeply understanding both sides of that equation that make those sometimes conflicting parties equally happy and equally successful. How are you going to deliver a product that your customers love and will choose to use if you don't understand them and how they work and what they do?
When it comes to experimentation, particularly in academic setups, it's okay from time to time to cross the red line, because you in these experiments are able to learn the things that can harm us. It's important that we experiment and that we fail fast in regards to how bad can this get, so that we can then look back and say, this is what we need to do right. But we can never put a product in the hands of people without actually going through that process of experimentation. And I think that's the balance that companies need to have right now. Traditionally, companies in Europe in particular are good at innovation and have been quite slow at deploying products. That model still works. What we need to do is fund innovation in a different way, that we can create experiments and understand the consequences of those technologies before we put it in the hands of people. But not with with the Silicon Valley model. Let's break things, like throw things into the public and see what happens, because we might actually this time hurt societies, and it's happening already. Younger generations coming out of school and universities are having a really hard time to get internships, because all those internship jobs are now being replaced by AIs. So the educational process is disappearing, which means we're building a gap between experts and people coming into the market. And when that gap widens, we're going to have a problem, a social problem in regards to skill sets. That then again, the AI will be the one coming through and we become dependent on it, and so on and so on. It's a vicious cycle that needs to be broken. It's super important to do experimentation. It's okay in certain setups to cross the red line, but it's not okay to take products into the market without testing what the consequences are.